Greetings, viewers. As we gaze down upon the engine bay, I've got the engine ready to pull. Since I'm putting in a different year engine, I had to take my harness out, and from the computer, since I'm not pulling the transmission, I'd take the intake off to get all the fuel injector wires and such out. That's the easiest way, not instead of trying to fish them out. I took everything over to this fender because I'm not pulling the transmission, and the harness runs down to the transmission as well. So I've pulled everything out and got it draped down over this fender. It's all out of the way. All the pieces are wiring down on the bottom. I've got all that off the front of the engine. It's ready to go. I've got the point I was making the other day about one 5VZ to another. The engine I'm putting in here is a 99 T100 engine, and all of the connectors on the harness end are the same for that 99 3.4 out of a truck T100 than it was for this. Now, where it plugged in at my computer is different. That's why I've had to take all the wires out. That's why I've got the intake and everything out. My power steering on the 96 is has the vacuum boost to raise idle when you're turning. The 99 engine has electric, so I'm keeping my power steering, plus I wanted to keep it all hooked up. I would have pulled the compressor if the AC system weren't dead on this vehicle. I'm going to have to figure out how to make that work, but I tested it at the little pressure button up here and it was 0 pressure, so I just pulled the lines. I will investigate that and fix it, seeing how I have like everything here to do it with. I was talking about put in new. These are all parts off of other trucks that I've taken apart, because that's what I do. I tear 3rd gen 4runners down and other Toyotas as well, but 3rd gen 4runners are my specialty. They have become. And all these parts were parts that I had laying around, so I am not like doling out cash on this thing. This is all parts, every piece of it. Some might agree with that, some might not. Basically putting in junkyard parts, and Toyota stuff is so great and reliable, I would rather put in an older original Toyota engine than a reman engine, unless I built it myself, and it would not be as good as Toyota did it, trust me on that. So rambling on, step one here, I'll get this out and I get the other one ready. I got to change the oil pan because the T100 was passenger side drop and the 4runner's driver side drop on the transmission transfer case and front axle part. So I've got to change that. I'm waiting on my gaskets and such. I'll be back on this when I get it out and get the other one ready to go back in. Okay, I got it out. Got my new gaskets sitting there for my exhaust to bolt to. I've got my my other engine prepped. Got my oil pan changed. I've cleaned all the surfaces. Everything's ready to go in. I've cleaned up the engine. This engine just had new valve cover seals done, timing set, and other things on it, which is why I chose this engine from the ones I had sitting around. It's a newer engine, lower miles than this truck, but none of that really makes any difference. But I've got everything changed. The only things I've had to change going from that T100 to this truck so far is my hoses here. And the fuel line is a little bit longer, but only about 3 or 4 inches, so I don't think I'm going to bother changing that. The less things I disturb that aren't leaking, the better. Already had a new alternator on it. I went ahead and got another new clutch and flywheel. The flywheel that was on there had a lot of heat cracks in it. I didn't want to reuse that, so I went ahead and got new clutch and everything for it. Already had new motor mounts put on it as well. I cleaned this engine bay up. This vehicle is going to go right back out into service and get filthy and dirty again. Plus, it's not trashed. I'm not experimenting. It's OG like it is, and I like that it's never been tampered with. So I'm just going to leave it. Now, the one on the 1st gen, I cleaned up. I got some of the stuff done. My my headlight buckets and turn signal or side marker lights come in, so I put them on. Got the front painted. I want to clean that one up and paint it and make it nice and fresh because I'm going to be in there multiple times in several different directions getting that engine I still haven't cleaned up put in there and mocking it up. So that's why I was going to make sure I get that one real nice and clean. Whereas this one, it's not trashed. I cleaned the yuck out of the bell housing. I cleaned the yuck off the differentials from where it was leaking oil prior. Cleaned the cross member. I mean, they're not spotless, but I didn't give them the spa treatment, but I cleaned it up. So the engine's ready to go back in. Hopefully have that running yet today. Changing the oil pan and the oil pickup was really simple. Of course, everything interchanges. So far, I've checked every connector I undid against the connectors on my harness, and they all match exactly. So that's pretty fantastic. I'm going to drop this thing in here, and I'll give you an update. Okay, just one little trick I do want to show you as I'm putting the radiator back in this unit. Everybody takes their grill out. Or not everybody, because I'm sure a lot of other people know this trick, but you don't have to take your grill out and mess with all those plastic clips to get your radiator bolts. I use the double tape method. I put a piece of tape, black tape, inside my socket, get over something, so that it holds the fastener. Get it out of there. See? So you put a piece of black tape, fold it over to the inside of the socket. That'll hold your fastener, and then tape your swivel, so it's kind of like a boot, and it'll still swivel back and forth, and then you can get to your radiator bolt. Let me get one back in there. Now I got that dang tape in there, don't want to let go. Give it a little angle to start with because you need it when you get there. I'm trying to do this by camera like a surgeon here. And anyway, you just go right through your grill and get started and run in. Then you can put your socket on it, or your ratchet rather. It's kind of blurry and stuff, but you can see you can get to them through the slot in your grill, and you can get to the bottom ones. They're right there through the slot right here in your bumper. Same thing with your swivel. So do that and don't take your grill out, waste your time. I'm almost done. I'm down to putting the radiator in, which means putting the fluids in, and I'm going to fire this baby up. But I wanted to share that. I hope the video didn't suck too bad. And also the tape on the swivel thing works really well for getting those bell housing bolts that are super hard to get to. Take 10 extensions. The tape on your swivel can help with that too. I accidentally cheated everybody out of the first start video. I had my camera all set up. I cranked on the truck. It took 3 tries of about 15 seconds each before I realized I didn't have the Toyota security system plugged back in. So after plugging that back in and having the fuel pump already primed up, it fired right up on the first try. The reason I'm cheating you out of that startup video is because when it started, the oil light immediately came on the dashboard, so shut it down. Started freaking out, trying to figure out what was wrong, because I did drive this truck, this engine that the truck was in, the truck that the engine was in, and it didn't have an oil pressure issue then. I got the K&N piece on here because this had that throttle body spacer. I have all the stock stuff. This was already all hooked up with a heat bypass to the throttle body and some other things, and it made this too short for the stock tube. I didn't want to mess with it because I've been curious about throttle body spacers, so I just left that on there to see what's what. There's not a K&N filter in here. I don't like those. Not only do I believe that they yuck up your mass airflow, I am not a fan of an oil-soaked filter. They don't filter as well. I did a contaminant test on a vehicle once, running it without a K&N, ran it with the K&N, and then without at 25,000 mile intervals, and it did show crappier during the K&N period. Anyway, I won't argue about that. So what happened ultimately, I got a little oil spot down here because I took my oil pressure gauge and put it on there, fired it up, had spectacular oil pressure. Apparently all I had done was kill the sending unit when I did the engine swap somehow. Maybe it was broke in the meantime while it was sitting here. This motor had been out for like 3 months, maybe 4. But anyway, I had my camera all set up, recorded all that. It was like an hour of me dicking around trying to figure out why I didn't have any oil pressure. So when I went to edit out everything but the start, I lost that part of the video. Also, I had meant to show you guys, talking about those bell housing bolts, I put all those in their spots prior to putting the engine in, because it's so hard to get your hand up in there to begin with. If you got all your bolts in there prior to putting the engine in, then all you got to do is sneak up in there with your socket and your swivel, and everything is peachy keen. Now, I did switch out the oil sending unit with one that I had here, so I got that going, no problem. Turn it on. Let's start switch and neutral. Anyway, she goes. Got an ABS slide on, that's it. No check engine lights. Fires right up, sounds good. There was a little bit of steam coming out of the exhaust at first, and I was freaking out. And then I remembered I had the blowed head gasket and the blowed engine and was burning antifreeze. There was a bunch in the muffler. It's steaming right now because, in spite of the birds chirping outside, it is a cold, rainy 37-degree day. There's my Tundra in the background. Here's my other 3rd gen. I've got to put the interior and all back in this one. I'm waiting for my vinyl floor mat to come. I'm doing the vinyl floor mat instead of the carpet, but I'm really pleased to have this working. It's all fired up and ready to go. I got to get my hood painted and put on, a few other little things here and there, but engine swap is complete. More on this project coming up. High idle. Still got a little bit of high idle on it. I haven't driven it yet either. I know the ABS isn't going to correct itself, but the idle issue may, once it actually gets driven, because the computer's been unplugged and it needs to relearn, because this is not an OBD2 truck, being a 96. So I'm going to get some interior in this and get it out and take it for a drive. But the 5-speed rear diff lock 1st gen is alive again, or 3rd gen. Dang it, I got my 1st gen on my mind today. I've been over there looking at it. So 3rd gen up and going, engine swap complete. And again, sorry you got cheated out of that first initial startup, but I suck at editing. So thanks for tuning in on this. More to come.